The post-World War II era marked a pivotal moment in history where the sacrifices of Black veterans were met with a disappointing reality: the failure of the U.S. racial system to deliver on the promises of equality and opportunity. Despite their valor on the battlefield, returning Black soldiers encountered systemic racism that permeated various aspects of American society. Moreover, the racial climate of the time extended to the workforce, where many Black veterans found themselves relegated to menial jobs and excluded from higher-paying positions. This economic disenfranchisement perpetuated cycles of poverty within Black communities, hindering their ability to build generational wealth and exacerbating existing social inequalities. Welcome to yet another interesting video segment here. Today, we are taking a dive at how the U.S. racial system failed Black World War II veterans. Don't forget to support our efforts by pressing the like button in front of you. Share with your family and friends to keep spreading our eye-opening Black narrative, and kindly subscribe to keep growing the channel if you are still yet to do so. Upon returning home, Black veterans faced segregated communities and discriminatory practices, limiting their access to housing, education, and employment opportunities. The GI Bill, which was intended to provide financial support for veterans, was marred by institutional racism, as Black veterans often encountered obstacles in obtaining housing loans and education benefits comparable to their white counterparts. When Eugene Burnett, an African-American veteran, saw the neat tract houses of Levittown, New York, he knew he wanted to buy one. It was 1949, and he was ready to settle down in a larger home with his family. The newly established Long Island suburb seemed like the perfect place to begin their post-war life, one that, he hoped, would be improved with the help of the GI Bill, a piece of sweeping legislation aimed at helping World War II veterans like Burnett prosper after the war. But when he spoke with a salesman about buying the house using a GI Bill guaranteed mortgage, the door to suburban life in Levittown slammed firmly in his face. The suburb wasn't open to Black residents. It was as though it wasn't real, Burnett's wife, Bernice, recalled. "Look at this house. Can you imagine having this? And then for them to tell me because of the color of my skin that I can't be part of it?" The Burnetts weren't the only Black Americans for whom the promise of the GI Bill turned out to be an illusion. Though the bill helped white Americans prosper and accumulate wealth in the post-war years, it didn't deliver on that promise for veterans of color. Let us learn about the GI Bill for a brief minute. The GI, that is, Government Issue, Bill, officially known as the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of 1944, was a landmark piece of legislation in the United States. It aimed to assist World War II veterans in transitioning back to civilian life by providing them with a comprehensive set of benefits. Key provisions included funding for education, guarantee of low-interest mortgages and other loans, unemployment compensation, and job training. The educational benefits offered by the GI Bill is said to have played a crucial role in the post-war economic boom, as millions of veterans gained access to higher education, contributing to a skilled and educated workforce. From 1944 to 1949, it is said that nearly 9 million veterans received close to $4 billion from the bill's unemployment compensation program. The education and training provisions existed until 1956, while the Veterans Administration offered insured loans until 1962. The Readjustment Benefits Act of 1966 extended these benefits to all veterans of the armed forces, including those who had served during peacetime. This legislation is often credited with shaping the middle class in the post-war era and has since been expanded and updated to support veterans of subsequent conflicts. However, while the GI Bill's language did not specifically exclude African American veterans from its benefits, it was structured in a way that ultimately shut doors for the 1.2 million Black veterans who had bravely served their country during World War II. in segregated ranks. In fact, the wide disparity in the bill's implementation ended up helping drive growing gaps in wealth, education, and civil rights between white and Black Americans. In many cases, benefits were administered by an all-white Veterans Administration at the state and local level. In an era of rampant racial and gender discrimination, African Americans and women struggled to receive higher education or loans. In some southern states, they were steered to menial jobs instead of college. Even if an African American received tuition money, their choices were slim, since many colleges were segregated, especially in the southern states. African American veterans in the North fared somewhat better, but still didn't receive a higher education in numbers anywhere near their white peers. College choices for women were also slim, since men almost always received enrollment preference. The discrimination didn't end with education. Local banks in the South often refused to lend money to African Americans to buy a home, even with the government backing the loan. And many of America's new suburban neighborhoods prohibited African Americans from moving in. As a result, many African Americans remained in the cities as whites flocked to the suburbs. However, it is of vital importance to state that this whole turnout for African American World War II veterans was neither accidental nor inaccurate. It was a well-calculated structure by the American racial system. When lawmakers began drafting the GI Bill in 1944, some Southern Democrats feared that returning Black veterans would use public sympathy for veterans to advocate against Jim Crow laws. To make sure the GI Bill largely benefited white people, the Southern Democrats drew on tactics which they had previously used to ensure that the New Deal helped as few Black people as possible. During the drafting of the law, the chair of the House Veterans Committee, Mississippi Congressman John Rankin, played hardball and insisted that the program be administered by individual states instead of the federal government. He got his way. Rankin was known for his virulent racism. He defended segregation, opposed interracial marriage, and had even proposed legislation to confine, then deport, every person with Japanese heritage during World War II. When the bill came to a committee vote, he stonewalled in an attempt to gut another provision that entitled all veterans to $20 a week of unemployment compensation for a year. Rankin knew this would represent a significant gain for Black Southerners, so he refused to cast a critical proxy vote in protest. The American Legion ended up tracking down the congressman who had left his proxy vote with Rankin and flying him to Washington to break the deadlock. Roosevelt signed the Servicemen's Readjustment Act into law on June 22, 1944, only weeks after the D-Day offensive began. It ushered into law sweeping benefits for veterans, including college tuition, low-cost home loans, and unemployment insurance. From the start, Black veterans had trouble securing the GI Bill's benefits. Some could not access benefits because they had not been given an honorable discharge, and a much larger number of Black veterans were discharged dishonorably than their white counterparts. Veterans who did qualify could not find facilities that delivered on the bill's promise. Black veterans in a vocational training program at a segregated high school in Indianapolis were unable to participate in activities related to plumbing, electricity, and printing because adequate equipment was only available to white students. Simple intimidation kept others from enjoying GI Bill benefits. In 1947, for example, a crowd hurled rocks at Black veterans as they moved into a Chicago housing development. Thousands of Black veterans were attacked in the years following World War II, and some were singled out and lynched. Though Rankin had lost the battle to exclude Black men from Veterans Administration unemployment insurance, it was doled out inequitably. Men who applied for unemployment benefits were kicked out of the program if any other work was available to them, even work that provided less than subsistence wages. Southern postmasters were even accused of refusing to deliver the forms Black veterans needed to fill out to receive their benefits. Black veterans and civil rights groups protested their treatment, calling for protections like Black involvement in the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and non-discriminatory loans. But the racial disparities in the implementation of the GI Bill had already been set into motion. As the years went on, white veterans flowed into newly created suburbs, where they began amassing wealth in skilled positions. But Black veterans lacked those options. The majority of skilled jobs were given to white workers. Sad. In addition, the post-war housing boom almost entirely excluded Black Americans, most of whom remained in cities that received less and less investment from businesses and banks. Though the GI Bill guaranteed low-interest mortgages and other loans, they were not administered by the Veterans Affairs Department itself. Thus, the VA, that is the Veterans Administration, could co-sign, but not actually guarantee the loans. This gave white-run financial institutions free rein to refuse mortgages and loans to Black people. Redlining, a decades-old practice of marking maps by race to characterize the risks of lending money and providing insurance, made purchasing a home even more difficult for Black veterans. Lenders froze out poorer neighborhoods, ensuring that loan assistance and insurance would be denied. And new white suburbs often came with overtly racist covenants that denied entry to Black people. In 1947, only 2 of the more than 3,200 VA guaranteed home loans in 13 Mississippi cities went to Black borrowers. These impediments were not confined to the South, notes historian Ira Katznelson. In New York and the northern New Jersey suburbs, fewer than 100 of the 67,000 mortgages insured by the GI Bill supported home purchases by non-whites. Black veterans in search of the education which they had been guaranteed fared no better. Many Black men returning home from the war didn't even try to take advantage of the bill's educational benefits. They could not afford to spend time in school instead of working. But those who did were at a considerable disadvantage compared to their white counterparts. Public education provided poor preparation for Black students, and many lacked much educational attainment at all due to poverty and social pressures. As veterans' applications flooded universities, Black students often found themselves left out. Northern universities dragged their feet when it came to admitting Black students, and Southern colleges barred Black students entirely. And the VA itself encouraged Black veterans to apply for vocational training instead of university admission, and arbitrarily denied educational benefits to some students. Those students who did try to attend college found doors closed at every turn. A full 95% of Black veterans were shunted off to Black colleges, institutions that were underfunded and overwhelmed by the influx of new students. Most were unaccredited, and with a massive influx of applicants, they had to turn away tens of thousands of veterans. Though Congress granted all soldiers the same benefits theoretically, writes historian Hillary Herbold, the segregationist principles of almost every institution of higher learning effectively disbarred a huge proportion of Black veterans from earning a college degree. The original GI Bill ended in July 1956. By that time, nearly 8 million World War II veterans had received education or training, and 4.3 million home loans worth $33 billion had been handed out. But most Black veterans had been left behind. As employment, college attendance, and wealth surged for whites, disparities with their Black counterparts not only continued but widened. There was, writes Katznelson, no greater instrument for widening an already huge racial gap in post-war America than the GI Bill. Today, a stark wealth gap between black and white Americans persists. The median income for white households in 2019 was $76,057, according to the U.S. Census. For black households, it was $46,073. During Black History Month, many school children have read about Dory Miller, a cook with no military training who shot down several enemy planes at Pearl Harbor. Miller, who became the first black American to be awarded the Navy Cross, died in combat later in the war. But even if he had survived, he probably would not have received the benefits created for World War II veterans under the GI Bill of Rights. Because he was black. The original GI Bill's benefits, signed into law in June 1944, were almost entirely restricted to whites, making it one of the worst racial injustices of the 20th century. The bill helped over 4.3 million veterans, mostly Irish, Italian, Polish, Jewish, and other working-class European immigrants, to buy a home. Black veterans who fought most of the wars in dangerous conditions were ruled out. However, today we can begin to repair this historic injustice. Representatives Seth Moulton of Massachusetts and James Clyburn of South Carolina, and Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia recently introduced legislation that would extend the benefits of the current version of the GI Bill to benefit direct descendants of Black American veterans denied access to the original one. The Sergeant Isaac Woodard and Sergeant Joseph Maddox GI Bill Repair Act honors two World War II veterans who personify harms done to black veterans of the greatest generation. Woodward, a decorated veteran, was returning home from Europe in uniform when a small-town police chief pulled him off a bus and blinded him with his nightstick. Maddox was a decorated veteran who was initially denied opportunity to attend Harvard because the VA, that is, the Veterans Affairs, did not want to set a precedent. The legislation replicates the current GI Forever rule that allows veterans who don't use certain benefits to pass them on to their spouse or children. It would extend access to VA home loans and the post-9/11 GI Bill educational assistance benefits to surviving spouses and certain direct descendants of Black World War II veterans denied benefits in the original bill. The GI Bill was certainly not the only 20th century legislation that harmed Black Americans, but it was one of the most pernicious, because education and home ownership are the foundation of intergenerational wealth. The original GI Bill directly contributed to today's enormous wealth gap between Black and white American households, estimated at some $11 trillion. As Moulton, a Marine veteran who served 4 tours in Iraq, said, "There are a lot of Black Americans who are feeling the effects of this injustice today, even though it was originally perpetrated 70 years ago. While our generation didn't commit this wrong, we should be committed to making it right." In closing, the promise of democracy and freedom for which Black soldiers fought abroad clashed with the harsh realities of segregation and racial injustice at home. The failure of the U.S. racial system to dismantle discriminatory practices post-World War II underscores the deep-seated roots of systemic racism and the persistent struggle for equal rights that continues today. Understanding this historical context is crucial in addressing the ongoing fight for racial justice and dismantling the enduring legacy of inequality that has persisted for decades. This brings us to the end of this video. Did you learn a thing or two? We would like to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to give us a like too if you enjoyed the information. Share with family and friends to keep our eye-opening Black narrative. And subscribe to keep our channel growing if you are yet to do so. Thank you for watching.